Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Sustainability Chats with Friends. I'm thrilled to be joined with Sanjana today, and she has a background in sustainable fashion and systems thinking, but she's currently working as a sustainability reporting analyst. So I'm really excited to chat with her because we met up in person for a coffee a while ago, actually, it was in the summer, but we just hit it off and we had so much to talk about. And so I thought that it'd be wonderful for everyone else to kind of hear your background and your views on things because I think you have a really
Yeah.
great kind of viewing the overall sustainability system. So before we dive into that, could you please take a moment to introduce yourself?
Well, hi, I'm Sanjana. It's really good to be here. And I still remember the long conversation we had one of those days at Somerset House, and then we eventually landed up going to see an exhibition. And I,
Yeah.
I just love how, we bounce ideas of each other. So I'm currently working as a sustainability reporting analyst with Dentsu. And I have been in London for around 2.5 years now. Majorly, I made the move to come and pursue my master's in innovation management at Central St. Martin's. So that's what's been happening lately. Prior to that, I have been working with the fashion industry for around 6 years, within sustainability for around 4 years now. And back home in India, I used to work with Lakme Fashion Week as their sustainability consultant within the events parallel of it. And yeah, we did a lot of fun stuff trying to make an event that big, go sustainable, carbon neutral, try to introduce a little bit of, actual planet empathy within such a big platform, which is more about the glamour and celebrities and clothes. So, like, it was more about how do we kind of remind everyone that we're here for the planet eventually, sort of a thing. So, that is pretty much my background. Currently, I think I am trying to answer one question with every stages of my career, where just now I'm really wanting to see how sustainability is not just doing less harm, but how to actually create a long-term value out of it, make
Mm.
money in a way that's fair and future fit, because at the end of the day, we got to be a little practical about what's happening in the global scenario. So that's what
Yeah.
I'm trying to work with.
Oh, I love that. And I love how you called it planet empathy earlier as well.
Yeah.
That's such a nice. I love that so much. I think, well, there's so much there already to talk about. And I thought maybe a nice place for us to start was the reason why we ended up connecting is because you sent me your article that you'd written, which was basically a summary of your master's degree thesis on LinkedIn. And I read it and I was like, this is amazing. I
Yeah.
love this. And so I thought it could be quite nice to kind of start there because your article is titled How Systemic Change with Material Innovation Can Unlock Fashion's Net Zero Future. And so I was wondering, maybe are there some key pieces that you think everyone should kind of hear about within that? Because obviously, like the article is just a short summary of like your overall thesis. Um, and so yeah, I'd love to hear also just after hearing you talk about, like creating long-term value. Like, did you also touch on that when you were writing your thesis in this article, or has that been a more recent thing?
Definitely. So I think it started off with this question. I think more so I entered my master's with this question. In fact, I've been grappling with it for a while now.
Mm,
Where a larger chunk of my master's was the thesis. It was a very research-oriented course. Usually UK courses are for 1 year, but we had a 2-year course where they really
mm,
wanted to give us the space to experiment what we do in a research context and then kind of map it into a real world context as well. So I think I just wanted to make use of that opportunity and really it started off as material innovation because that was something I wanted to dive deeper into personally. So I just thought that, how can I get to be an expert in that while using my time efficiently? When I started talking to people within the material innovation in fashion landscape, which if we would imagine it would be relatively tinier, Like
Mm.
when we just think about it, we think it's a rather smaller silo, but it was so funny how everyone had different barriers that came to light. Everyone had different, um, they had lots of different definitions for the same word and a lot of different contexts for the same word. And that just, I was like, wait, something's going on here. Like, I need to, I just want to see what's happening and talk to more people within that space to actually understand if it is and if it is a problem. Where I kind of realized that there were a lot of barriers coming up, like when you talk to founders, when you talk to facilitators, when you talk to brands who are looking at integrating material innovation within their current model, everyone had more barriers to talk about. Like they had more negative things to talk about that we're struggling here. And, instead of being in a more, okay, this is happening, we're planning on doing this next month and we're planning on doing that soon enough. So I think that's where I picked on to understanding the barriers. Slowly, I realized that each of them were interconnected to one another. So I think in mind maps, and I think I used this thesis to actually make a huge mind map of the same. And like, how do you do that? While I was doing all this, my mentor within the course just happened to tell me that why don't you check out what systems thinking is? Because I think you are kind of thinking in a system, but you're just not realizing how to, put it under that umbrella. And
Oh,
like,
cool. Okay.
so that's where just on a random day, we had one lecturer come in and she spoke about systems thinking completely serendipitous, where I was struggling to find. I had so much information and I was like, how do I really map this out to just so that it is beneficial to the industry, not just to research, but it's something that actually can be implemented on. I think that was the core objective I had personally to do the
Okay.
research, that instead of just, making it purely academic and uh, sending it for a publication or for a journal, I really wanted to use it, as a conversation starter, which I think I succeeded at.
Definitely. 100%.
and and I think B, it was more about actually doing it and how people can use it as a, uh, you know if you when you read it, you'll realize that there is lots of information. So just in a nutshell, if I was to explain what it was, it's
Mm.
basically how the barriers to the scalability of next generation material innovations can be, how they interconnect to one another.
Okay.
A, so you understand that solving one barrier is not going to solve the wider problem, which kind of reinstates that we really do need to solve a lot of these problems together to actually create change. But now,
Yeah.
why would we want to create this change? What's in it for a brand? What's in it for a facilitating organization?
Mm.
Um, I think I wanted to use each of those barriers, convert them into opportunities
Mm.
to really accelerate our industry's transition towards net zero commitments. Because
Mm.
uh, I think since the last few years, we've seen a pattern where everyone's pushing their net zero commitments
Yeah.
5 years and then 5 years and then 5 years. So I think that
Yeah.
stuck with me,
Yeah.
that there has to be a reason why that's happening, A, and B, how can another problem in the industry actually be a leverage point to solving this larger problem?
Right.
So that's basically what the thesis talks about. If
Okay,
I
cool.
think, yeah.
Yeah, amazing. Are you able to break down the system a little bit more?
Sure. So I think what we work with is fashion in general is a very interconnected system. We think that the supply chain is linear, but it evidently is not linear. There's a lot of global south, global north. It's an entire, like, there are a lot of there are a lot of actors that contribute to this system.
Mm.
And I think the first step is to actually break that down as to you break a supply chain down, see the different parts of the supply chain, see where uh, which part of it actually needs help. Is it the manufacturer that needs help? Is it the brand that needs help? Is it
Mm.
the retailer that needs help? So I
Okay.
think my solution, which essentially is the leverage point system, where I have divided the solution into three aspects.
Okay.
It sees how every part of this system works with one another and how that solution can be implemented within each part. Of course, it's a bigger study when you kind of move it into every part of it. I haven't reached there yet. Hopefully, someday we do get to that.
Yeah.
But so we start with pioneering actions where we talk about semantic alignment, where everyone should be able to understand each other's language literally and figuratively as well.
Yeah.
As I mentioned, manufacturers are based in the global south predominantly at the moment, whereas retailers, brands, and a lot of that stuff is going global north. And there is a massive language difference, there is a massive cultural difference. So,
Right.
how do you kind of begin with aligning that where everyone's understanding what we're actually trying to say?
Mm.
So I think beginning with that as a pioneering action to actually moving up the leverage ladder, to saying that, okay, let's move to a slow fashion industry. That's what this thesis talks about.
Amazing. It's so interesting. And I love leverage points as well. I remember that being one of the big learnings from my master's degree as well. And
Right.
systems thinking and all of that.
Yeah.
I'm guessing you read the book or you studied Donella Meadows' work as well. Yeah.
Yep. That's
I love that.
exactly. She's so good, and all
Yeah.
the work is so good. I think one of the things that stood out to me and really stayed with me from her work was the dancing with the systems analogy,
Oh, what's that one? I don't remember that.
which so she basically says that you should kind of dance with the system. So it looks at a system with a lot of humility and curiosity
Mm.
instead of like at the moment, I feel what a lot of us are trying to do is stand outside the system and kind
Right.
of control it like a machine where we're like, okay, we're going to understand everything and then we're going to change this here, change this there, sort of a thing. But I feel, when you actually step into the system,
Mm.
you become a participant of that system and dance with it in a way where you see how it moves, you listen to what the actual grievances are, and then you start with smaller interventions.
Mm.
You adjust based on the feedback that you get with a lot of iteration. So I think that was my understanding of dancing with the systems, and it was, it's just, yeah, that stuck with me from her work
Yeah,
as
that is
a
beautiful.
anchor point. Yeah.
Yeah, that is beautiful. And I think that's something that's been coming up a lot for me recently as well in the conversations that I've been having, which
Hmm.
is nobody's really expecting anyone to change overnight. We're just
Yeah. Yeah.
expecting you to take like incremental steps every day.
Exactly.
Yeah, yeah. I'm really curious because you said that you wanted this kind of system that you've designed to be implemented by industry. Have you been able to send it to someone who can use it in industry, or is that kind of a plan that's to come?
Uh, so I think I spoke to a lot of people who this can directly benefit to
Mm,
just as I was creating it. So I think
mm,
most of my sample for the thesis essentially was everyone who could benefit from this because they were my target audience at
right,
the end of
right.
the day.
Yeah, totally.
So if I was collecting information from them, I was essentially solving for them. So I do have that network of people built in. I have sent the thesis over to them. We've had a lot of great conversations. I think I used it as an entry point to even kind of place myself within uh, that career trajectory. I
Mm.
do something very different now in reality, but that's just where life takes you and what you make of the moment.
Yeah.
But I think I am looking at, someone told me this recently where they said that you could use your entire thesis to map your entire career, where that
That's
leverage
smart.
system
Yeah.
can actually be used to, you focus for the next 5 years, you focus on the pioneering actions. For the next 5 years, you focus on the orchestration enablers. So I am looking towards eventually moving this into a deeper in-person, practical, action-oriented uh, uh, stunt, I would like to say, where I'm
Yeah.
actually testing this with the industry at regular intervals to see, whether it's clicking, whether it's not clicking.
Mm.
It got great feedback from a academic perspective, but
Mm.
I really want to see how I can, what's the kind of feedback that I'm getting from an actual real world perspective too.
Mm. Yeah, that's really interesting. That is an interesting way to kind of break it down and see it. I love anything that's to do with actions and getting people. I think that's kind of the most important part.
I know, totally.
Um, yeah, and I would love to hear more about your master's degree as well, because I'd never heard of an innovation management course before. And so I was wondering if you could just break it down a bit for someone who maybe also didn't know what innovation management is or means. And also why
Def
you were curious to focus on innovation, Like
So I think a little backstory to this. My previous boss, now turned mentor, she's more
Mm,
of a mentor now. I knew I wanted to do my master's. I knew I wanted to focus more on the sustainability aspect of it, and sort of not just limited to the fashion industry, but kind of understand other industries to then bring that back into our ecosystem.
mm,
Uh, so I was just talking to her about, I want to do my master's and I'm probably going to quit eventually and kind of move towards doing my master's. And she's like, you know what, if you get Central St. Martin's, I will let you go.
no way.
So she was an LCF graduate herself. So it
Oh
was
no way.
more of
Okay, that
a,
makes more sense.
you
Okay.
know, we've done this. I would love, like, I know you can push yourself to getting there and I know you have it in you. So it was
Yeah.
more so her belief.
Okay.
Where then when I was checking at all the courses that were there, I just randomly came across this degree called MA Innovation Management. And if
Mm,
you go check their page out, uh, there's so much information and it looks so enticing because it's for people who like intellectual simulation.
mhm,
It's the place to be. Like every day was a new paradigm that we learned, every day was a new thing. And uh, so I think just their page where they gave the information and the study guide that was out there was so, it was something I had never done before. It was
mhm,
something that I knew did not exist in the country yet.
mm.
So if I was making a move to another country, I was trying to weigh what am I actually getting out of it. And
Right.
like it had to make financial sense to me as well. It had to make, you
Right.
know. So I think that brought me to innovation management.
Okay.
That was again a challenge. Okay, I need to get into Central St. Martin. So I took that as a motivation rather that, I think I should be able to get in. And it just so happened that everything worked out well in that year and I made it to CSM.
Amazing.
Uh, when you talk about innovation management, I think one of the first things that they told us was that anything you do in the industry is serendipity, which really stuck with me.
Okay.
On the first day, I didn't know what they meant by that. I
Right.
love the word, I love the concept from a more conceptual point of view. But when your course kind of tells you that, I was like, wait, how is this going to, like, what are we talking about? Like, I expected, again, we come from an education system which is very structured, which is very textbook oriented. We've got chapters and, it's very level one, level two, level three, level four.
Hmm.
So to actually put myself in this course of uh, innovation management, it was one of the best experiences I could have had. I would like to say best and toughest, but from a bird eyes perspective, I think it was the best thing that happened. A little about innovation management. So I think what they try to teach you here is that the world is we're living in a VUCA world, as they like to say it, which is we live in a volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous world.
Okay.
Lots of big words, but when you actually see uh, how we're doing from a more global perspective, each of those do stick around with even our daily, even just with daily life, you realize that it is quite volatile, it is quite uncertain, it is very complex, and there's a lot of ambiguity out there. So I think that's the base of it. And then what it throws tools and techniques at you. They teach us a lot of different concepts, paradigms, tools, which we can use to actually figure out as a career professional, how can we help the company, or how can we ourselves stay relevant and sustain uh, not just economically, but more from a future perspective as well. Like, how do you use innovation to better a system? How do you use innovation to think from a human-centered perspective? How do you we did a lot of future forecasting. And so we have all these little toolkits that we've built during these 2 years that helps us do this.
It's really cool. I'm wondering what your definition of innovation is, if you have one.
Uh, this is actually something that each of us were asked when we kind of left the course. So
Yeah.
we were asked this on the first day and then on the last day, and it was really fun to see the difference
Yeah,
between
I
the
bet.
two. I think now what I see innovation as is basically I see it as the need of the hour in a way that uh, how you kind of translate what has happened before.
Hmm.
So history definitely doesn't repeat itself, but it does show up in waves
Mm.
in anything and everything that happens. So I'm using innovation to, you know, kind of study what happened before, how people innovated back then, what drove them, what were the problems, why did they actually innovate, what happened with it,
Mm.
did they sustain, did it work, was it implemented, etc., etc., and then how can you kind of position that in today's context?
Mm.
How are the problems similar? So I see innovation as a bridge between what happened before, what's happening just now, and how we can use it to better the future.
Interesting. That is really interesting. Because I find that with well, as a society, I find that we're very much like, what's the new thing that's going to save us? Like,
Uh,
what's the new technology? What's the new innovation? And I think that that almost devalues like
yeah,
the past and some more ancient kind of practices like regenerative agriculture comes to mind. Like I think that is one of the greatest innovations that we have today and in the past to combat climate change and so many other issues
totally,
like food scarcity and biodiversity and saving water and carbon capture, like a lot of it. And so I find that
totally.
that happens quite often. So I quite like that your definition encompasses kind of the past, the future, the present and the future. That is
All
interesting.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, well, thanks for explaining that. Yeah, because it sounds like it's a really interesting course to kind of view the world through. And I remember when I did my course, there were just so many things that completely changed the way that I lived my life and saw things. And I was wondering if there's maybe one or two things that you're like, yes, like this has shaped my life now every day or whatever it is, I now do this instead of whatever it may have been, or like I lead my life in a different way because of this.
Oh my God, absolutely. Someone had recently asked me what was the master's to you and like how would you kind of just what was the journey like? And I was like, it wasn't just a master's in innovation management. I feel it was more of a master's in life because in the last 2 years, the amount of things and just the way the course is designed, I feel they've made it such a real world experience. There's so much uncertainty bouncing through modules. And that does trigger anxiety, that like
Mm,
from a very real world perspective, this is the first time I'm away from home. I have, migrated to another country. Although we know the language, we know everything, it's very familiar to home, but um, a lot of things change. So like within while you're doing your master's, how do you balance those other things? And then the benefit that I had is that my master's taught me how to balance those other things too. It didn't just teach me more study related things. So
mm,
I like to think of it in that way. So again, there's a lot of design thinking that we do. There's a lot of, you just map out the problems on a post-it. So more from a day-to-day perspective, I think if I am facing a problem today in my real life, like if I'm trying to figure out where to live next, or like those kind of questions, I have started seeing all of those from an innovation management lens, where I'm like, okay, let's start with doing a little bit of design thinking around it. Let's like figure out what are the pros and cons, which previously would have been a big jumbled puzzle in my head. And now I think I'm using the things that I learn here to actually put the pieces in place, if that
mm.
makes sense. Like,
Does.
uh, yeah, so I think a lot of that. And I think majorly I did realize that I see things more broadly, and I have been seeing things more broadly all my life. And I just realized coming here that there was a term to it, which is systems thinking.
Amazing.
So I don't think the course made me a systems thinker. It just made me realize that I am one, and
Right.
how can I use it as an advantage to
Yeah.
navigate not just my career, but life in general.
Yeah. Oh, that's really beautiful. I like that a lot. Do you,
Yeah.
how do you think that that mindset can help the fashion industry be more sustainable?
I think just now the fashion industry is working in a lot of fragmented silos.
Hmm.
Everyone's doing their own thing, and we're working in a very competitive perspective. But one thing that comes to my mind as a easier solution, or a rather in the moment solution, is
Mm.
let's move from competition to competition. Like let's really sit, understand the problem, and eventually you'll realize that if I, as brand A, am investing in a manufacturing facility to go green, and if brand B helps me, even if we are competitors, if we together invest in that, our investment's going to be lesser, but the return's going to be way more for both of us, which is eventually going to help us with so many other things, like there's, I think, just moving towards competition, but how do you get a brand to agree to be not a competitor, but
Right.
work together, is when you actually see the problem as a system. You show them the interconnectedness, you show them that even if you think that you're competitors, this your path is literally the same, your purpose is the same. Why not join forces in that sense and solve your problem faster?
Yeah, I completely agree with that. Like cooperation and collaboration all the way. I think
Yeah,
I don't think people talk about it enough. I mean, I think collaboration comes up a lot, but I don't
yeah,
think people kind of talk about it in a way where it's like, yeah, you are actually, or you don't have to, but you should be partnering with your
uh,
competitors and
yeah,
like
yeah, yeah,
creating all of these solutions around that. Because then I think that also then like changes the whole kind of mindset of the industry because it goes from something that is very much like we've got a race to like get everything out and like we have to be on trend and like we have to be better than this person and this person. It makes it, I feel like it just like, you know, calms everything
yeah,
down. It's like, okay, actually, we're going to be working on this partnership, which is going to be groundbreaking and amazing and is going to offer lower impact solutions, and then it will attract the right brands and the right customers and all of that stuff. And I think it leads to an industry that's more inclusive as well, and like that kind of
Exactly.
like openness mindset and kind of forward thinking mindset as well. And it's like here for the long term, it's not just here for the short term trends.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think the collaborative aspect of it, there's again a lot of collaboration that goes on,
Totally.
everyone's anytime you ask people. So this was actually through my thesis. One of the questions I'd asked each of my sample was, what does collaboration mean to you? Like, how
Mm,
do you see collaboration in the industry today? And like, what are you trying to get out of it? And
right.
someone had explained collaboration as a constellation to me, that
Oh,
it's
yeah.
actually a constellation where there are different universes, and then how that together actually makes the entire system come together. So I think, yeah, collaboration is key, but how people implement, I personally feel in the moment, implementation is the word that has to be focused on rather than, we talk a lot about strategies, we talk a lot about our transition plan, and, we've got this plan, and everyone's working on so many future forward things,
Mm,
but maybe if we need to take a step back and realize that the problem is now. Of course, if we continue, it's going to be a problem in the future if we continue our practices the way we already are.
yeah.
So, how do we actually implement that change in the present is what's needed to be done rather than thinking of, oh, within 3 years, we shall do this. It's definitely great to break it down and, have it mapped out. But I think maybe it's important to really start somewhere. Like let's focus on starting somewhere and then see where it goes.
Yeah, totally. I mean, this is so hard because obviously it's company dependent, but do you think that there's one area where maybe not the majority, but many brands or many suppliers could start to do that change?
I think uh I think we really need to start with, I mentioned this earlier, talk the same language or
Mhm.
talk in a way that everyone understands.
Right.
We're all uh, talking at very different, everyone has a different definition, everyone has a different vision. So,
Mm.
how are you actually able to communicate that to different stakeholders?
Hmm.
Because it starts with everyone being on the same page, right? Like, no action is going to happen until you're not on the same page as almost everyone within the value chain,
Hmm.
because it is a wider issue. But how do you kind of get everyone? So I think to start with uh, educating everyone, I wouldn't say educating everyone, I would rather say kind of helping everyone understand what your motive is, how it benefits them, and this is what we're in for. Like, just really drill that into everyone within the value chain, and I feel implementation will just become easier because then the person understands and they know why we're doing this.
Mm.
So just that, like, I think, for example, this is something I kind of focus on or I try to do when I have worked with artisans in India, where they they don't really understand sustainability as a word. But when you actually go and understand what their process is, what they've been doing since years and generations, like I think it's like the third or fourth generation that's following that handicraft today, or they're, making a product a certain way today, you realize that they are the most sustainable, planet centered people out there. But they just don't understand these words, which is fine. So how do you kind of get them to, uh, again, now to be in touch, like keep up with industry standards? A lot of them have turned from natural dyeing to, like to chemical dyeing. But and they do have to sustain economically, right? So they realize that okay, natural dyeing could be, it's a slower process. It requires a lot more actual, you know, uh, feedstock and things like that. But how do you kind of get them to say that, okay, guys, you know what we were doing before was right? Instead of telling them that, hey, listen, don't use chemical dyes anymore. We are not allowed to do this. You actually kind of make a story, explain it to those people out there that, this what we were doing and what your fathers were doing and what your grandfathers were doing was such a good concept, and it's making sense to a lot of brands now. So how do you actually talk to every different level within the value chain is definitely a start.
Yeah, I think that is a great place to start. And there are even on a governmental level, there are I
Exactly.
don't the commonly agreed upon definition of sustainability. The last time I checked,
Exactly.
so yeah, I think that is a great first step. But
Yeah.
I think you bring up another really interesting point, which is kind of what I spoke to earlier with innovation being seen as like what's the next new thing and not really
Hmm.
valuing the things that have been
Hmm.
around for many, many years, like artisanal handicrafts and stuff like that. And so I was wondering, do you see them being able to be tied together at some point in the future?
Optimistically, I really wish that happens. I really wish I'm able to contribute to that as well in some way, in whatever way, 1%, 2%, definitely. But I think so. Even just for example, within the course, a lot of us spoke about most of the people were focusing on innovation more from a tech perspective. That
Hmm.
as soon as you say innovation, the first thing that comes to someone's mind is AI, is
Yeah.
technological innovation. But even when I say material innovation, it's a lot of those fancier things that pop up in
Mhm.
your head that,
Yeah, totally.
oh, you're making fabrics from this and you're kind of making. But
Yeah.
I think I see innovation as how do you actually simplify the problem? Like
Mm.
start with simplifying it, start with understanding the problem, simplify it. And the solution has to be very simple and very practical where you're able to implement it. You're able to get feedback and then you're able to better it. Like
Mm.
it's more of a feedback system. So I think if we bring back those ancient practices, which I feel is coming back, right? Like a very domestic example, uh, hand me downs are a big thing in India. They
Okay.
are so normalized. Uh, it's we see it as heirloom, where we see it more from a prestigious perspective that I have my grandmom's uh, wedding dress, or those kind of things where we've attached a lot of emotion to it. But
Mm.
that has percolated to the global north very recently with uh, so second hand clothing was very, very, very common in India. Not using plastic was very, very, very common in India. Today, if you go and see a lot of people, it started from a more health perspective that we do not store things in plastic. So, technically, the narrative was always health to be more sustainable,
Mm.
and it was the well being of people. Fortunately or unfortunately, the Industrial Revolution came by, and things changed, and uh, it's great how you see that, and then are going back to those practices now. We are going back to composting has become the new thing now. Everyone's wanting to do composting. So I think a lot of what sustainability is going back to those previous practices that were being followed. I mean, secondhand clothing you see vintage, it's blowing up. Like everyone's on it. Everyone's realized that they have a monetary benefit. They have it's become a cool thing, right? So I already see it happening. I already see, those ancient practices come back to light in different ways. Of course, it's slow, but it's great to know that it's happening. So I would like to optimistically say that it will happen in the future, and I wish it happens in a bigger spectrum
Yeah.
than these little things.
Yeah, I'm glad that you're optimistic about it. And I like how you've broadened the definition of it as well, because in my mind it was more, I don't know, I guess like handmade craft focused, but it's so true that handing things down that you've owned for generations can also apply to that as well. So I
Ex-
like that a lot. And also, yeah, like Vinted, I think just launched in New York within the last month or so, I think. And it's booming. It is booming. I saw this really interesting article actually, and it was this woman who was saying, I think it was Brittany Sierra. Um,
Mhm.
I believe she started the Sustainable Fashion Forum. And she was saying that sustainable fashion should learn from like Vinted and secondhand resale platforms
Exactly.
because they've been able to really like sell the emotional attachment to customers. And that's kind of where sustainable fashion maybe is lacking a little bit because it feels very much like you have to make a sacrifice. Whereas with this, it's like, okay, you're being a bit better for the planet because you're avoiding buying new. In some cases, most cases, you would hope that that's the case. I'm sure people still buy new and secondhand, but anyway, that was kind of the selling point. And she was like, it's an important lesson in making something mainstream and like seeing how you can really appeal to people's kind of like emotional side. I thought that that was
Right.
quite an interesting take to kind of see it as a case study for the greater sustainable fashion movement.
Definitely. Yeah, I think it's all about the psychology behind it, where how is it appealing to different, maybe it'll appeal from a more sustainability perspective or more planet-centered perspective to the Gen Z,
Mm,
because we have grown up seeing the, we have grown up seeing climate change. We have seen a lot of things, but then when you think of it more from the generation before or the generation even before that, which would essentially be our parents' generation, they
mm,
have not they haven't seen it. So, like maybe they might not understand it from a sustainability perspective, but they might understand the same concept from a well-being perspective,
mm.
that this is necessary for well-being. So it's more about what narrative you choose, who your target audience is, and whether you're choosing the right narrative to put that point forward.
Yeah.
Of course, at the end of the day, it is to help the planet, but not everyone cares about it, and it's fine. Like it's all right, but how do you as a brand, or how do you as a individual promote other people to care about it, is what I feel matters.
Yeah. And I think also a financial perspective as well. Like I think that's why
Yeah,
Vinted's taken off because it's a lot cheaper than a lot of the other resale platforms. You can get some pretty good brands on there. Like I think that also helps.
exactly. I think as a student, that was the best thing that happened to me, because uh especially in London, so where I come from in Bombay, one we have predominantly one weather condition.
Okay.
Like it is humid. So most of our wardrobe is for that one kind of weather condition. When I came here, I realized I needed three different wardrobes. And
Yeah.
when I say wardrobes, like head to toe wardrobes,
Yeah.
everything's different. I cannot possibly wear what I wear in peak summer and even in midwinter, like I wouldn't be able to. I've literally started packing bags and putting my summer wardrobe in and then removing my winter wardrobe, which I feel as a student, it was amazing pocket money that I could just make without doing any actual work, where I was, you know, just selling things on Vinted and I would get some money. I was able to shop for something else with that. So I think it appeals to everyone in that sense. So that was great.
Yeah, it is so nice. It is so nice to be able to
Yeah.
earn some extra money from selling
Yeah.
your things as well.
Exactly.
And kind of knowing that it's going to someone who wants it as well. It's not like you're just picking it off at a
Exactly.
shop. Like you know that somebody's gone out of their way to choose that item. Like that makes
Exactly.
it better.
Exactly. Definitely.
I would love so obviously your writing's amazing and you've written quite a few
Yeah.
articles and I think you were a freelance writer for a period of time and I'm guessing that now because you have a full-time job and that's relatively new that maybe you don't have so much time to write. And so I was wondering if there's a topic that's kind of been on your mind recently that you would like to write about but maybe don't have time to write about and that instead you would maybe want to share with us today
Oh
verbally.
my God, there's so much. I genuinely miss writing. It just so happens that I don't have the energy anymore to come back home after the job and kind of get to it. But I really do want to build more on that. I feel it was a good way to kind of talk about what matters to me what
Mm,
matters to the industry, and kind of just see. I think it's a great way to. So I've done a lot of freelance writing before,
mm,
but now I think I just write for fun, like, just to see what other people think about the same thing. How is
yeah.
it landing with them? And it's a good experiment, and so I think that's great. But I think one of the topics that I really am looking at researching and writing today is how does data actually drive strategy? I currently am working as a sustainability reporting analyst with Denso, so I've gone very far away from the strategizing aspect of what my work used to be for the last couple of years to
Mm,
a very data related thing. We're practically looking at Excel sheets all day. But that's where you understand that all that data is the truth.
mhm,
And how do you, like, if that's the reality, how can you use that reality to actually define your strategy
mhm.
instead of having a strategy first and then seeing where that data fits in?
Right,
I
totally.
want to, I really want to explore how can you kind of reverse that and
Right.
be like, how can you strategize based on data?
Mm,
So, and again, I currently work with Dentsu, so it's a different industry. It's not the fashion industry anymore, but what we do is a lot of operational sustainability, and we're an internal team looking at operational sustainability within Dentsu. So, which I feel, as we spoke about supply chains, we spoke about value chains, we spoke about manufacturers, and thinking everyone's using energy, everyone's using, water. How can I bring that into the fashion industry? How can I bring my stunt here into actually helping simplify that for the fashion industry? I think would be an uh, interesting research and right, and hopefully a good read.
yeah, totally not. I think it would be a great read, especially at the moment because the digital product passport is coming out, and I think that that has so much data attached to it, which would be amazing for people to use and for brands to use. Because you can, for those who may be listening who may not know, the digital product passport basically would mean that as a customer, if you're buying an item of clothing, there'd be a QR code on it or a barcode on it. And you can scan it and you can see like where the fiber was grown or where it came from, how it was processed, how it was dyed, what journey it took to get to you, if it can be recycled with ease or not. And I think that that's amazing. And then from a brand standpoint, you can then use that information as well, like who's buying my stuff, like where's it going? Does it need to be repaired? Like I spoke to this amazing founder. I think it might have been the episode maybe 2 episodes before you. It hasn't come out yet. But he was basically using the digital product passport to do this, and then he could send the data back to the brands and say, okay, hey, like this customer used our app and your top keeps getting holes in the elbow. Maybe you should consider redesigning that product. And I think that that is such a great way to approach
Exactly.
design and sustainability as well. So I think that would be a great read.
Yeah. I think just talking about it also kind of puts that, like, this is gonna go out, so I'm gonna have that pressure in my mind somewhere where I'm like, okay, I've spoken about it, I need to do something for it. I think that's what's really helpful. So thank you for
Well,
seeding that thought in.
well, I'm glad it's helpful. I'm glad it's helpful. I hope it's not like a horrible pressure. It sounds like it might be a
No,
nice
no, no.
pressure.
It's the best. It's the best kind of motivation out there.
Good. Okay, I'm glad. Well, I think as we kind of somewhat come to a close, I would love to ask you, so I guess two things about systems thinking, kind of if someone is new to sustainable fashion and kind of thinking and also like fashion sustainability and innovation as well, not just, you know, not just sustainable fashion. But what would you say to them to kind of give them optimism that the industry can shift fast? Because I was going to
I
ask you originally what practical step they could take, but you've already answered that with the definition. So I don't need to repeat it.
Okay. Uh, I think I try to follow this myself, where it's more about the 1% change that you make each day towards a more positive impact on the planet,
Mm,
within the industry, within your personal life, anything. Just if you just go back home and think about one thing that you could change in the day which would benefit the planet,
mm,
uh, I think that is a good start, and that kind of helps you. It's optimism with a shred of practicality, because you're seeing it from a very, we spoke about incremental change. So you're seeing it from a very, every, like, how small steps kind of lead to a bigger change. Of course, you need a lot of radical bursts in the middle, but then it's those smaller steps which are the building blocks that help you do it. So I think for optimism, mine stays as it is because I am able to do something almost every day, which I know has benefited the planet, it has benefited the industry in some way. So I think it narrows down to action. So if you're able to map that one action that you're taking each day, that'll just help you be more positive about it. I would say it is a rather uncertain world with sustainability in fashion, particularly. Like,
Mm.
it's an uncertain place out there with sustainability in general, but I feel in fashion we are slowly seeing the redundancy come in. We're slowly seeing, uh, of course, if a company is bleeding financially, I understand that sustainability might not be the first on their list, but I think I see being planet empathetic as, I'm really trying to figure out how that can help you financially and
Mm.
actually show you that, yeah, you know what, if you do care about this, it is helping your profit margins. It is helping. Maybe you might have to invest some money just now, but from a longer term perspective, you can be stronger. So I think there are a lot of those different things which help you stay optimistic. So maybe try like
I love
those.
that. And you said that you map it out. Do you write down your action every day, or is it more internal, just in your mind, you kind of acknowledge it?
I think it started off with writing it down almost every day. We within the course, so all to my supervisor and mentor, like, huge shout out to her. She told me that, you should keep a small journal as to what you're doing every day, and it'll just help you understand what the 2 years have been for you.
Mm.
Uh,
That's really
Luckily, I took that advice and I did it. It didn't make sense for the longest time possible because I was like, okay, but what I did yesterday makes no sense today, with what I learned today. But now, when I actually see it from, okay, now that it's done, how did each of those things, intertwine and interconnect? Uh, so it did start off as a practice of writing back then, but now it's just more of a subconscious habit where, if you, it's as simple as, instead of taking a takeaway cup, I just kind of have my own coffee cup, and
yeah.
every time I'm refilling it. So it's those little things that kind of add to a bigger impact.
Yeah. I love that. I do that as well. And that's great. And so then just to close, I ask everyone, what is one curiosity that you'd like our listeners to look more into or explore? And that can be anything. It can be a book, a way of life, a film, a theory, and like literally anything at all.
Okay, I think I have two for this.
Okay, that's
I have mentioned it before within it. It kind of sums up what we spoke about in general, but
yeah.
that is something that I am very, very, very into myself. So I think dancing with the systems, like,
Mm.
really try and understand that from whichever industry you may belong to, whatever your role within the fashion industry is, kind of try and pick up what it might mean to you and how you can use that as a concept to kind of just work in general. You don't need to solve a problem, you don't need to, just maybe work efficiently, even. So, like, Dancing with the Systems by Danella Meadows is one article. She has an article on her website about the same, so that would probably be a good start. And I think, secondly, truly believe in serendipity. Things happen, they do make sense eventually. So even if you're doing something and it feels that it's not making sense just now, just trust that it will make sense, and like, good things will happen out of it. So I think, more from a sustainability perspective, good things will happen out of any action you take towards being planet empathetic. So just kind of trust that and do a little more of it.
Totally, totally. Oh, I love that so much. Thank you so much for sharing. And I'll share the links as well to those articles that you mentioned in the resources page. But yeah,
Perfect.
thank you so much for sharing your perspectives. That's such a beautiful note to end on.
Thank you so much for doing this. It was so much fun. I think this is exactly how we spoke the other day that we
Pretty
met,
much.
and it was, yeah, it's just so nice to it's so nice to even have other people. I think it's very motivating when other people think similar to you.
Mm,
And when we spoke about the optimism bit of it, maybe like us talking to each other did motivate us in some way that, yeah, okay, you know what, at the end of the day, what we're doing is definitely not going down the drain. Somebody
yeah,
else is doing that. They care about it too. And, I think we're all in it together. So the more you talk about it, though we're all in it together, bit of it makes sense. And I think that pushes you one step further every day. So,
agree.
yeah,
Yeah,
thank you for this.
thank you. Yeah, we're all in it together as a lovely community.
Yep. Totally.